strategy,
design,
marketing,
UX,
digital.
development.
This is Agencies That Build. This show is dedicated to leaders and teams that design and deploy in the digital world. My name is Jessie, and I'm a marketer and an agency owner.
And I'm Varun. I'm not a marketer, but a coder and an agency partner.
This show is sponsored by Together We Ship,
On a mission to help agencies grow.
All right, here we are. Rock on. Varun, my friend, how are you? What's up?
I'm good. I'm so excited. This is our first episode for this year, right?
Oh my gosh, it is, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I didn't realize that, right? The last one was like last December, which we launched early January, but now we are doing our first recording this year. So very excited.
Season 3, is that what we're calling it? Unofficial, official season 3. So yay. Excellent. So are you ready for our guest today?
I am. Who do we have?
So today's guest we have is a technology executive with 15 years of experience building software. He's the winner of Grand Rapids Business Journal 40 Under 40 honor. He's the winner of the Inc. 5000 award. He's a guest speaker at Western Michigan University. He's the president and CEO at Spark Business Works. Bob Armbrister, welcome to the podcast, Bob.
Thank you, Jessie. Thank you, Varun. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. So we're going to start off this episode with our myth-busting question, as we do most episodes. What is some kind of myth that you would like to bust, some sort of misconception that you'd like to smash, or bogus strategy that you'd like to set the record straight on? What do you got? What do you want to clear up?
Yeah, I'd say my myth is, that SaaS is going to put, agencies out of business, or that SaaS products are going to be the end all be all of the future, or, these no code platforms. The myth, that I believe heavily and have evidence of is that, custom software is going to be around for a long time. It's going to be needed. And, it is most of the time the biggest differentiator for most companies.
So you're saying that software is the way to go over building a SaaS business?
Yeah, I'd say, yeah. So my myth, which, I doubled down on 5 years ago, was really, instead of building another SaaS platform, to, build a service agency, to be able to be nimble and adapt and serve many different types of companies. And that was kind of the myth. A lot of people said, no, that the future SaaS, you got to build a SaaS platform. It's the only way to scale. And so that's the myth that I'd like to bust.
Yeah,
you can scale a service company. It's possible.
Sure. So tell us more about your experience with the SaaS products, because I imagine you have built some SaaS platforms in your career, or you were always a service industry. Why did you come up with that? Like, why do you say that SaaS platforms are not the future?
Yeah. So, I mean, from my perspective, so I've had, several different startups, SaaS based, and, early on building SaaS products, just the, over time, as you start to get adoption, you begin to slowly paint yourself into a corner of not being able to change and adapt. And so, depending on, what your long-term goals are and what your exit strategy is, what I saw in my early SaaS platforms was, once we launched, we lost a little bit of flexibility. And then as you start to get more users, you lose a little bit more flexibility. And then, over time, you're constantly running the race of churn and refilling in churned users, and then, having price constraints. And so your pricing was typically going down. So yeah, it just created a whole new, array of challenges. And then after having several that didn't do well, I realized that the party that did the best in those situations was actually the developers, right? And the software architects and stuff. So I went to service at that point for a little while and kind of ran a small agency, went back into SaaS, exited one, still hold on to a couple, and then went ahead and started Spark, which was a service-based software agency that can spread multiple industries. And so I've seen both sides, and depending, like I said, on your exit and what makes you happy and what success looks like, they're for different types of people. But I think the myth that I love, at least, is the service side and the variety and the different problems that you get to succeed and tackle, and you don't have to make sure that your idea is going to be the winner if you're the one servicing the entrepreneurs. So
absolutely, I think I can relate to that to a very extent, because I had something similar background. We started our own product, a SaaS product, which did not, as compared to you, we did not succeed. We never sold. It was like totally waste of time and money. And then we moved into service. But I think the argument that you mentioned about bringing the cost down, and there will always be competition, and someone will push you down. Does that not hold true for the service industry as well? Do you not feel that pressure from the competition and about the pricing, about in the global market now?
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
So that's a great question. I think that the challenge or the reason there is the relationship with the client, right? So on my SaaS platforms, we'd have hundreds of thousands of users, millions of users. We didn't have, we had relationships with probably a handful, right, of power users. Whereas in the service company, right, at Spark right now, I think we're at 125 or 120 clients, right? But we know every single one of them, right? We've had, meals with most, we've visited most in person. And there's a different thing there, right? It's more of a lifetime value. So you don't have the churn that you do when you're trying to, if you're churning 50,000 customers a month and you have to replace them, and they're just numbers. Where what we were able to do with Spark, which got us the Inc. 5000, was we were able to grow 400% over the course of a couple of years, and it was all through referrals. There was no like growth hacking or anything like that. It was human beings recommending a company to other humans, right? Customers recommending, a service-based business to other customers that they think would add value. And I think, that's just a completely different mindset of SaaS and scaling and, the different methodologies that both have. But
it's like the difference between a client and a customer. There's a lot of agencies versus your tech platforms that'll use customer, and as they move from customer into that client status, there's a perceived value that goes along with how you engage with them, the support level you engage with them in. I think it's as I'm listening to you chat through this, it's an important distinction in terms of how you think about who you're servicing. So
yeah, absolutely. Like if you think about when you have a SaaS business, and the biggest thing there is churn, right? I mean, you're constantly trying to figure out churn, why people are leaving, what aren't you doing right, what features do you need? You're trying to guess. I mean, you can get some feedback from clients or customers, but you're basically, a little bit in the dark. Whereas in service, like when there's cases that we're not doing a good job, our client will tell you, right? They'll tell you what you need to do. Hey, you have a relationship. Okay, that didn't go well. All right, we're going to make a change. We're going to do something different. It's just a way different type of business, I think. And I think the one that has the most value for longevity, if you're trying to build something that's going to last, it's through those relationships that'll do it.
For context, you mentioned as you were describing the two differences here from an exit plan perspective, because not everybody has the same, one thing we've learned from this podcast is not everybody has the same exit plan or the same strategy in terms of what growth looks like. Can you talk a little bit about, you've got some interesting things, there you go, I'll tease it for you. You've got some interesting things that you've done, flipping between that client side and that agency side. When you think about your growth for your service-based companies, what were your exit plans there, and how do you feel like that shaped some of these decisions?
Yeah, so that's a great point. I've read tons of different books, and talked to a lot of different people about, when you're building something, you shouldn't be building it to sell it, right? And you can see where that can get you short-sighted. And so at Spark, we've always been building for the long haul, asking employees to help build something they're proud of, right? Without some type of, hey, we're trying to do some type of growth hacking thing so we can get to this certain multiple so we can exit. It's really hard to keep people engaged in that kind of environment. And we've acquired agencies over the course of time as well, because you get kind of burned out if it stays at a certain size. We've seen, where there's a lot of agencies that kind of get to a certain spot and, they haven't maybe leveled up past a certain group of clients. And that can be, just as difficult as running, a SaaS company that is on the edge. So obviously starting with the exit, and if the exit plan is to sell and become, super, rich one day, then, I think it changes everything versus trying to build something that's actually going to serve your clients and your employees and build something you're proud of. It's a long-winded answer, so I don't know if I just went all the way around.
Well, I mean, it's something we haven't talked about. You have this unique advantage that you're bringing to the conversation around flipping between both sides. I think we've all done that to some extent too. You've been on being a tech entrepreneur, being an agency owner, client side versus agency side. There's a lot of unique perspective that you bring into your business and making your business decisions in terms of what shapes some of those decisions. In our prep call, for example, there's an interesting note that I wrote down. And as you were talking, I was thinking about it. It says entrepreneurs get it right 1 in a million. And I think, we're stating the obvious here a little bit, but the idea of building a technology and getting user feedback is hard to the scale that you need to be able to affect your business versus from an agency perspective, people are coming to you literally saying, here's my problem that I need you to solve by building this thing. And I'm going to tell you if it's wrong, but I'm also going to tell you if you nailed it. So it's a different communication style in terms of how we go about building the business. Whereas the tech is a little bit of an interesting animal because you don't always know unless you spent the funding up front to figure it out. And even then, COVID hits and changes everything, or something else happens and changes everything. Do you feel like you guys, I guess, Varun, I'd ask you the same question as being an entrepreneur here too. Like, do you guys have any thoughts on that? Am I a crazy person here?
No, that's absolutely right. And plus, on top of that, you get paid, right? You get paid no matter what. If the technology product that you have built, it's going down or up. I mean, the entrepreneur is going to, the business owner or the startup founder is going to keep paying you because they need to keep their service running. So I totally understand from that perspective and agree with you.
It goes to the second comment that I think we talked about, which is developers are winning. I think that's, not to quote you in your own interview here, but there's something to that. Any thoughts on that one? How do you see them winning?
I mean, it's just like, the people that were selling stuff, tools to the gold miners, right? I mean, they didn't have to, they weren't betting on the gold miners. They were selling them supplies, right? So, I think especially now, I mean, agencies are basically selling right to the gold miners. We do a lot of different projects for customers. I think the more experience that you have too, the more value you can add to a customer, the more failures that we've seen in the past, allows us to kind of help customers not make the same mistakes that we see others. But nowadays it's becoming way less costly and way easier to vet some of these ideas, and through prototyping and different types of user experience type tests and things we can do to really make sure that their ideas are going to work. But yeah, I mean, I guess in a sense it can be a lot less riskier. You don't have to make sure your idea is going to be the champion, like you said, 1 in a million. So yeah, I mean, I think it's.
Do you have how do you guys test out some of those ideas? Let's get into the nitty gritty with that. Everyone's always looking. There's traditional methods, but I would love to hear kind of what you guys have done and what's worked and what maybe has blown up in your face. Not to put you on the spot, but
no, absolutely. So yeah, almost all of our engagements will start with a discovery period. And if a client doesn't want to do a discovery and just wants to start building, we will not do work for them. And in that discovery, it's vetting out not only technical feasibility, but understanding the stakeholders involved. And so where we've seen people make mistakes in the past is where, you make all these decisions in a room and then you build for several months and then you roll something out. And so we will force our clients to do, if they want to work with us, is we'll make sure that those key stakeholders are actually involved in the discovery phase and understanding their needs. Far too many times early on, would we build stuff and then roll it out into the field and be like, are you kidding me? Like this user doesn't have access to, internet, and we've just built them a mobile app. I know that's a dumb example, but we've done that before. We had a healthcare client that paid us to build an app to help them do like field assessments and checklists and kind of safety procedures. And then they realized that, in the basement of a hospital, they had no Wi-Fi. And they're like, doesn't this have offline mode? We're like, that's when those are the early stages. And now, we do these assessments where it's like, okay, let's get that inspector in the room. Let's talk about their needs as we put together their kind of their prototype or their architecture. So obviously, user stakeholder mapping, prototyping, proof of concepts, right? Technical proof of concepts. And that's becoming easier and faster to do than ever before. Those are, the obvious things that hopefully all agencies are doing, but making clients do it, I think is the differentiator, not letting a client bully you into just starting, but saying, no, we will not work with you unless, just knowing that they need to do it.
Yeah, I think, so that example of running an app with no Wi-Fi, figuring that out in the discovery phase is kind of a very common, I think, problem that we all might have faced at some point, because not everything could be figured out, by just understanding or listening to the problem that client bring to the table. So discovery is absolutely important, but at the same time, the person who is doing that discovery, that also plays a huge role. And I've heard from every agency owner that we do paid discovery. We want to get, understand the client before we do anything with them. That's all good. That has to be done. But then I think it is more important to realize and understand who is the person, what experience that person has, who is doing the discovery. So how is your team set up? How do you identify that person? How do you assign this role to a person? How would you trust somebody that he would be asking the right question? Because somebody with strong experience may just ask in the first place, like, is this app going to run on an offline mode or an online mode?
Right.
So how do you do that in your firm? How is your company set up?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in most cases, we'll have a project director. So somebody typically with a business degree, be part of that. We also make sure that we have one of our UX designers, UI UX designers, to be able to be in there and truly understand the user, ask the right questions, do a few different types of plays to understand and kind of smoke out some of the details, right? So we have a playbook of different things we can pull into a meeting with a client, the 5 whys. I mean, there's all sorts of things that they'll do. And then we'll have a senior developer as well from an architecture standpoint. So you're bringing in a high level project director, a senior developer, as well as a designer at that stage, to understand and figure those things out. So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that's key to success for the discovery, to bringing in the right team at that point. Because some people I've seen that they will just put the business analyst, a person who, without bringing in the the UX architect or a senior designer or a developer, and discovery is basically writing all the user stories. That's not really discovery.
Right.
Discovery would need to understand like what is the tech stack going to be, how is the user experience going to look like. You don't have to do deep dive, you don't have to do all the low fidelity markups and wireframes, but still on a high level you need to understand the customer journey mapping to some extent.
That's it. Yeah.
So,
the key for our discoveries for our clients is to put them in a better position to make a decision, understand technical feasibility, and then a roadmap. And let them take it from there. And if they want to hire us to do it, or if they want to put that out to market, either way, we hope that we have a good enough relationship at the end of that. 9 times out of 10, we're the team to move forward. But just authentically serving the client, putting them in a good position. This is all stuff you would do with the SaaS product. But getting them in a good position, I think too many times they're led astray, or they're given a ballpark too early, or they're all the different things that can go on. So
I do want to talk about, you mentioned that you along the way as you were growing your agency, you bought 2 agencies. So that experience of buying an agency and instead of hiring people, I think that's what 2 options people have usually. Either you keep hiring or you grow faster by buying agencies. So tell us about some of the experiences that you had during the process of buying other agencies. You did like 2 agencies, so that would be phenomenal.
That was, I had a mentor around years ago that he was an entrepreneur that bought and turned around companies, and so he taught me a bunch over the years, and I kind of had the itch to try to acquire. And we had been trying to enter a market, and it was really hard. It was it was really difficult to enter that market. And so I started to look at, okay, maybe we can acquire a book of business in that market and a team in that market. And, found someone that had been, doing software for the last 15 years. And, it's kind of my age, but had been kind of burnt, ready to go, not burned out, so to speak, but he kind of always kept the business around 10 to 12 employees, and, kind of owned the job, and, didn't, was just kind of ready to, made a ton of money, didn't need, to keep doing this. And so that was the first acquisition. And, we learned a lot on that one. And we got some great people, some great customers, but it was a huge learning curve on the acquisition front, thinking that we knew everything, right? Like, hey, you can leave after the first day, we'll be fine without you, no worries. And, we don't need to worry about their brand. We're just going to absorb the brand and use our brand. And so we learned a lot. We lost a couple customers right up front because we didn't talk to them before the deal. We lost a few employees. And then the second one, which we're actually about 90 days into, we structured it way differently. Like, hey, the old owner, stay on, be a team member, stay on for a few years. And in that case, it's an aging entrepreneur kind of looking for an exit strategy. So it's like, hey, stay on, keep the customers happy, keep your role, and let's get you in a position where you're working on the stuff that you're passionate about, and, involving the employees more, and making sure we're really conscious about making sure they're in a good spot so they stay on the team. And so, it's the difference between doing the first deal and then learning and structuring the second one differently has just been tremendous. But the second one's been, they were both great successes, I would say. And we've built a lot of great friendships and good customers out of it. But the second one has been less rocky, less rocky of a road. But
so when you went out to make the acquisition, where you were focused on growth from a specific industry or a niche that you wanted to expand into, so finding somebody who filled that niche specifically, what would you say, I'll use your word rocky, what would you say was kind of one mistake that you made that you would want to be comfortable sharing to our listeners who are maybe exploring acquisitions themselves, that you're like, don't do this?
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the owners that are going to be listening to this. So the first, which I'm great friends with both of them. All right. So the first deal, I was so
Uh,
emotionally wrapped up in the deal, like you just want to do the deal, right?
yeah.
That I made too many concessions. The owner didn't want, he didn't want to spook his employees, right? So I get it. I totally get it from having sold companies and buying. I totally understand it. You don't want the buyer to talk to the customers. You don't want, because what if the deal falls through, right? Because nothing is certain. Like you have a letter
Yep.
of intent executed, everything can be perfect, but
Yeah.
then something can come up last minute. So it's like, you don't want to introduce this buyer to your customers. You don't want to introduce them to your employees, because what if it doesn't go through? And now you just think of how
Cars on
messed
the
up that's,
table.
oh my gosh, right? You can't undo some of that. So on that first deal, I was like, okay, yep, you don't want me to talk to customers, it's fine, no worries, we won't. Don't want to talk to the employees, fine, that's okay. And then what happens is you get a couple customers that were like, hey, I don't know, you change in ownership, I don't know, maybe it's time we just take a little break. It's like, oh man, if I would have been able to talk to that customer, which we got all the customers back, but just having that, it got, customers freaked out a little. New ownership, we've known our guy for 10 years and now he's going to leave. I don't know. Like, yeah, maybe let's reassess. The second deal, we started working together on some customers together. We had the conversation with our customers. What do you think? We're working together. How's everything going? We're thinking about a merger. What do you guys think? Oh, it sounds like a great idea. We've got all those other capabilities and we'd love to take you up on that stuff. So, we met with the employees and we talked to them about it. And so, the first one was kind of, more closed. And then the second one was a lot more open but that takes the right kind of team members and stuff too. But yeah, so that's kind of the example, and I get it. And so is there a happy medium in there? Boy, it's tough because
It's hard to your point, like what if you say something or do something and the thing kind of,
right.
That's a technical term.
My biggest
Yeah.
concern,
How do you spell
my,
that?
my biggest concern is usually but if I was to buy a company, my biggest concern would be how would I keep the employees, because we are buying company to grow. Employees are the asset. We want to buy them because we want to grow faster. And to grow faster, we need team. And the team, if they start leaving, I don't know if, we haven't really explored the idea of buying yet, but the question that comes to my mind is how would I make sure that the employees stay? Because when the leadership changes, as you said, like people start freaking out and they feel what will happen to me, my job and my role, because I'm going to merge with other team members. And so did you guys do any in the second one? Did you guys do anything differently about keeping the employees? Or like, I know the owners usually stay for 3 or 4 years, or I know 3 years is usually standard, I have heard, but I don't know, what do you do about employees?
Yeah, so obviously the first thing we look at when we acquire a firm is there any wage compression? Is anybody underpaid to the market? Let's fix that, right? So when we're analyzing the financials of a deal, we're not using their current financials when we're kind of doing the valuation. We're adjusting for some of that. So you want to look at, does anybody deserve a raise? Does anybody need to be compensated? And then, also what kind of retention bonuses, right? Can we give a retention bonus 6 months from now, a year from now? And so that's always been, at least in this last deal, we looked at retention bonuses to make sure the teams were, committed. And then I think it's about having the relationship. I try to meet with every single person on the team every quarter, and that, during COVID, I realized, like, man, I haven't talked to that person in a year, and they're on the team, so, it wasn't until just a few months ago, it's like, I need to make sure I'm talking to every single person. And, I think when it comes to an acquisition, it's checking in with those people often. How's it going? What do you learn? What are you running into? And just making sure that they feel an open channel to talk and communicate their needs. Seems to be working.
It's you haven't used the word, but I'll give it to you. It's transparency. So it's a really in all of my roles, regardless if it's client side, internal, or agency side, the idea of, lack of transparency breeds paranoia. And so what you're talking about is, sharing what you can share, letting people ask questions, and being transparent about what you can't answer either, and saying, look, we're in the middle of something as a business. You got to trust me a little bit to know that it's going to be a good thing, but I can't tell you that right now. So it sounds like that may have been a little bit of a communication shift. And again, every deal is different. One isn't better than the other, but even as you
Right.
reorg teams within organizations, it's hard. Or bring in a new team member who might be middle management. It's hard. That's one of the hardest hires in a lot of places. So let's talk a little bit about COVID and kind of how you guys tackled that as an organization, and how you shifted resources, and how you kept folks motivated. I know I don't want to call it on the tail end, but like whatever this new world looks like on the other side of the drama, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
How did you guys kind of float through that? Maybe float's not the right word there, but weather the storm of COVID. How's that one? That's a better. Were you always on site, or were you remote? And how did, let's start with that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've always, we always had a kind of an open office like mentality. We never cared how often someone was in. It was like, it's all about productivity. We don't want someone to spend an hour in the car driving somewhere just to sit at a desk and then go home and spend another hour. Like, I'd rather you just stay home and get more productivity out of you. So we always kind of had that flexible environment, work from home, work from the office. We want to see your face. So when COVID happened, it wasn't like a big shock or anything. Everyone just kind of didn't come in the office. We changed some things around. We started to hire more people that weren't necessarily in our geographical region, because it was like, well, this is going to, kind of made us less worried about local geographic proximity for our workforce. So we hired some people spread out. We started doing things like, I think every Wednesday we have like a 15-minute coffee chat. So it's like a Zoom chat, and then, a happy hour chat where people can just hop on and then see each other, play games and things of that nature. So just trying to be a little more aware of that. More all hands calls, checking in on people. I'm just glad it's getting over with. So, getting more people back engaged is huge. Now it's just trying to break out of that, like, especially from a sales standpoint. Like, we kind of forget now, like, we're so quick to just set up another Zoom call where it's like, wait, this person's in the same town. Like, I should just drive over there. But like, we all default to like setting up a call, or not even calling anymore. It's like, you can't just pick up the phone. Now you got to schedule something. So it's just kind of, now it's, we did fine. We grew a lot. We hit the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing private companies during COVID. So I think we managed pretty well. But now I think it's trying to break back out of it and say, man, I haven't seen so-and-so in 18 months. Like, I wonder if we, and you don't want to ask everyone to come back at once, because, you want to be, you want to be aware of everyone's got their own situation, and you don't know if they're living with an elderly parent, or, so you don't want to like force people to come back, but you still want to see everybody. And so that's kind of the weird navigating that right now. I don't know if you guys are experiencing any of those kind of.
I mean, the hybrid model is an interesting animal, because there's something about being in the space together and making it work. Those who choose not to, I think it's the struggle is real. When we talk about, the struggle was real when everyone was working from home, but at least you're in the same boat trying to figure out how to paddle in one direction. In this case, with more, like you said, you're hiring with more global approach to teams and where you're hiring and who you're working with. It's a hard, how do you keep the connections? How do you keep the culture going? Varun, I know you have lots of thoughts on this one.
Yeah, actually, yes, because we, so our company, so we have about 400 employees. So with people of that, so the team of that size, there are many cultures, many teams within bigger organizations. Some teams are really pretty happy with, they've always been, focused on productivity and they wanted to just get the work done, while other people, especially the design team, creative people, they want to be in the room and brainstorm ideas on the whiteboard and all that. So we are in a mix of hybrid approach where we are going to continue. I mean, COVID has, so we always wanted to have this remote flexibility, but we never did that because I don't know why, because most of the people did not want to, I guess. But COVID has forced us, and we have seen this has worked, because last 2 years have been phenomenal years for us as well. Team has done amazing job, and there was no productivity loss. So now everybody's open and they love to work from their home with their families, with their kids, and they spend more time. And so I think that is what I'm hearing from other agencies as well. Like, people are going to continue this road. And the biggest benefit that we have heard and we have seen ourselves is allowing us to go and hire people outside our own cities and towns where our offices are.
Yeah.
Earlier, we wouldn't have even thought of doing that. But now, like last years, we have done, that's all we did. Like, we kept hiring, but it doesn't matter where they are. So that has opened up the gates for us to acquire talent from various parts of the world. So that is the biggest advantage and takeaway for me, that COVID has done for us.
How have you kept the team connected? This is always I know you were talking a little bit about stand-ups and things like that. Is this a nut that you've cracked? Like, how do you keep people chatting?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty active Slack environment. A lot of really cool channels in there for whether it's about I think we have a pets and plants channel in there. Family and kids. I mean, so we try to engage people that way, and that seems to be really good. We do a weekly newsletter for the whole company that we have department heads kind of doing a slide. We have some updates on key initiatives, and then we allow where we have one person each week, they get to write whatever they want to the whole company. And everyone has to do it. You get your week and you can write about anything. And that's been really cool. I love seeing that. And so people have chosen all sorts of things to write about, but it's like their voice. We do our all company calls. We just had one last week, and I prompted the team with 2 questions, which was basically, what questions do you have for the company? Or myself to answer to everybody. And then, what do you want to share with everybody? And so it's like, ask any question you want. It's anonymous. I'll answer it to the whole company, no matter what it is. And then, what is something you want to share? And I think just letting people know that they actually have a voice and when they want to be heard. I think that's what's working for us. And then I'm also trying to now meet with every employee every quarter, even if it's 15, 20 minutes, just checking in. How's it going? You got to be really intentional about the communication stuff. And it's really easy to just brush it off and just go heads down. So you just got to have discipline and do it. And I think that seems to be working for us. It's not easy.
No, that's good advice. I think what you said was being intentional about it makes a big difference, even in smaller organizations or larger organizations. Just being seen and being heard is good.
Yeah, and manager one-on-ones, right? We do weekly one-on-ones. Every manager has to have a one-on-one with their team members each week, and that's easy too to kind of brush off, but it's important.
True. Unless Varun, you got another question, otherwise I'm going to shift again.
Yep, go ahead.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about offshoring and outsourcing. You guys have done it. What was your take? What was your experience? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. My first experience was a long time ago, 15 years. I ran out of money on a startup, had to find a cost-effective way to pull a project across the finish line. And I found a team in India to help me do it. And it was, I don't know, I loved the experience, right? Like I could code at that point. I could code all day. I got stuck on a few things that were hanging me up. I could hand that off before I went to sleep. I could wake up and it would be done, right? It was like, oh my gosh, the thing I was held up on all day is no longer a blocker, and so I just loved it. Like I just thought it was so cool to be able, and I love efficiency stuff, right? So just being able to make progress 24/7, I think was just, I don't know, I just loved it and built some great relationships with the team over there. And so I continued to do that for a long time. And, clients, 10, 15 years ago, I would kind of not bring it up, kind of trying to hide it, a little bit. And then it got to a point where it was like these team members were so important. Like I felt like I was doing a disservice if I did not just bring it up and make sure clients knew, like, because I'd hear, people all the time, like saying that it was, you're taking jobs away from, Americans and stuff. And at Spark, we've grown tremendously and we've created so many jobs in the US because we've created jobs offshore as well. And so it's like, we wouldn't have done any of this stuff if we didn't have a balance. And so anyway, so we were proud to have a team in India, our team members over there, and we know them. We're actually sending some folks over there to see them as well, and are going to look at finding ways to bring them over here to meet the teams. So we wear it as a badge of honor. We love it. We've got a great culture of offshore and onshore teams, and depending on the client, we'll find the right mix. It allows us to be more responsive, right? So we had a call like a daily with a client today. We found a bug. Okay, well, guess what? The US team's going to work on it for a few hours, and then our team in India is going to pick it up. We're probably going to have an answer for them in the morning. That would typically take 2 days if it was all onshore. So I don't know. We like it. It works for us. Our clients, I was with a client the other day that brought up one of our team members by name and just said how much she enjoyed working with them or enjoys working with them. And so,
Well,
we bring them to the client meetings and everything. So we don't throw the work over a wall and hope it gets done. I mean, they're in the trenches with us and it works great for us.
You can't be that lucky. There must be something you have done, right? Something you must have done right to make that happen, to build that relationship and the way you have worked with the offshore teams. Or were you lucky? Like, what's your secret of working with the offshore? Because I mean, people have mixed opinions, right? People have mixed experiences. So I would like to know if there are any learnings that you had for others who may want to try that model to see what can they do so that they don't have to burn, their money with this concept.
Oh yeah. I mean, everyone has their stories, right? And 9 times out of 10, when you ask about it, it's like they use the word like, oh, well, I assumed the developers knew this, or, oh, I didn't know that they were going to be on vacation. They had a holiday for that week or those few days, or it's like, all these things that if you had a relationship and you were transparent with your needs, that's typically the case is, they see it as like, I'm going to throw this work over the fence. I'm going to be kind of vague because it's going to take too much time for me to outline all the details and all the requirements and actually spend time on a call and go through all these details. I'm just going to write up this email, maybe do a video and shoot it over the fence. And then I'll be disappointed when it comes back and it's not what I expected. That's typically what people do. So what we've done with that team, I mean, just being super transparent. Hey, here's how we work. Here's what's expected. And it's like all those difficult conversations you don't want to have when you're hiring somebody because you don't want to like lose that applicant. Like we just say it, So yeah, I think doing it just like you were hiring someone that you're going to sit next to. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, I think most people think about the technical skills. We want to, we do the same type of personality assessments we would do. We want to learn about, what's their family like? What do you do for fun? Where do you want to be in 5 years? What does success look like? I mean, we hire that way. We want to know these individuals and they're going to be team members versus Okay, oh, I need a PHP developer. Okay, top 10% and upward. Yeah, let's just give it to this person, and then all of a sudden you're not happy. It's like that's the approach we've taken. What about you? I mean, everyone has stories, right? Horror stories of.
Yeah. So, well, our team is pretty much consists of offshoring, right? We work with, our team is overseas. That's our business model. So um, I am more of a receiving end of usually the stories that you would have heard, because we are the one who bring the people to the agencies. And the stories that I hear is mostly people. The reason why people are afraid to go offshore is, there's usually the communication gap and the transparency, because people don't want to accept mistakes. They don't want to say no. Those are some of the common areas that we've heard. And that's what, people, I mean, in this culture don't like. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. I mean, yes or no. I mean, you can do it or you can't do it if you understood or you did not understand.
Yeah.
So that's hard to train. And I think that has caused the maximum friction between people, here and there. So, but to your point, it's if you're building the human relationship first, then all of these things will become less meaningful. I mean, I would say not less meaningful, but it becomes easier for them to understand and work with you. People don't think like that, right? People don't think, they look at them as a resource. They look at them as,
right.
Yes, it's a developer. I need 40 hours. So here's a task, do it. But when you make that connection with them, then you make them feel part of your own team, your own culture, which takes time. It cannot happen overnight, because for them, it's they are themselves looking at themselves as a resource for the clients over here, right? So you need to tell them, you need to make them understand and realize that we are going to work together for a long time. So we want to, make sure that we know you and you know us, align the expectations. That's what we try to do. Like whenever we engage with the customers, like we would like to know them. I mean, we'd like them to engage and communicate with our team before they hire us, because that's the key. Like that's they need to know how we talk, how our accent is, how good their English is. All of these little things matters, right? That's what that's what that makes them feel comfortable or not comfortable, but at least they would know.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we do typically when you're trying to find a resource, you're going to find the first person that checks the boxes and you're just going to say yes, versus like, okay, no, we're going to hire somebody. We want to find the right partner. We're going to interview, and you're going to interview, and you're going to, like you said, yeah, you're going to get some people that, I just didn't really feel a connection. But you just keep going because versus, like you could hire somebody in a matter of minutes. Like right now, if we needed to hire a dev, we could probably find in the next couple hours. If you want to find the right dev, it's going to take you a few weeks, and you're going to interview a lot of people. But when you find it, it's like, wow, this person's going to be great. They're going to be a great member of the team. And I think it's just
the intention.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's the intention behind it. Do you need someone to fix an immediate problem right now? Or do you need to find somebody who's going to be with you and plan for growth? And, how do you want to scale from that particular piece of the business? So cool. Well, I have one last question for you. Unless Varun, you got anything else, I'm going to ask All right. So what is exciting you about the future? That could be the industry and business. What's kind of wrapped up in your imagination right now?
Yeah. I mean, I think the future, what gets me excited, I think is the speed and the different technologies that are happening in that smaller companies. Like we like to play with more smaller, medium-sized projects. And the fact that these companies now have access to the technology that built like, Domino's Pizza Tracker and Amazon and all this stuff that you can now plug into through, APIs and different microservices to help clients that have smaller organizations have the same type of technology. I think that's pretty cool. We work with clients, manufacturing clients that want to have, real-time order tracking, and we work with construction firms that want to, have daily data from their job sites, and all stuff that would have been impossible 5 or 10 years ago, or just not impossible, but just not attainable from a financial standpoint for smaller, medium-sized firms. So I think what's cool is that ability. I know it's not like the awesome, blockchain and all this kind of stuff, but I just think the access to some of this technology to firms that was typically unattainable, that's pretty exciting. Because, I'm a champion for the small, medium-sized businesses. And so seeing that they have a nice pathway here to level up, I think is pretty cool.
I think that's the heart of what you're trying to say, is like the pathway to level up, regardless of some of those technologies are cool. Those people did start small, the order tracking being a more consumable. I mean, that benefits everybody, does it not? Especially with the conversation we had earlier in this chat around the hybrid model of work, the hybrid model of living.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be a whole nother episode about retail and consumption models and how people consume and expectations, and, what Amazon has done to all of us and why isn't it here? How come it's taking a week to get delivered?
Yeah, I know, right? It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Bob. Really appreciated the conversation. So folks looking to connect with you can find you on LinkedIn under your name, your company website. It's sparkbusinessworks.com, and your company LinkedIn profile as well. So thank you so much. That's it, everyone. If you learned something today or laughed, tell somebody about this podcast. See you all next time. Thanks for listening. Find our other episodes on agenciesthatbuild.com. Plus, we're listed anywhere you find your favorite podcasts.